we put a lot of time in that, and it was hard work. There's probably 2 levels that we just couldn't finish. What an absolute treat that would be to remaster those so that they could be played again.
The PC versions of the first 3 Harry Potter games have become classics in the 2 decades since they were first released. Veteran games developer Christo Vuchetich was the lead artist for The Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, and lead designer for Prisoner of Azkaban, and I got the opportunity to interview him about the process of developing this trilogy of games. In my first video, we talked about the making of the first game. Link in the description if you haven't seen it. This time around, Christo discusses Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban. I began by asking Christo about the transition between the first and second game. How soon after completing The Philosopher's Stone did they begin work on the Chamber of Secrets?
I believe the second one was almost immediate. The sales were through the roof. They were super happy with it. So 2001, that came out. And I would say that by January of 2002, we were probably already starting production on the second one.
And were there any constraints imposed by Warner Brothers?
We had a lot of freedom, particularly in the environments and what we built and where you could go and the world, the spaces we could do. And we had a lot of fun with that. We had just had such great level designers on all the games to build and just be really exploratory with what we could do with those environments. You have to remember, part of this is we don't have months of time to come up with really elaborate mechanic systems. We have to figure this stuff out in weeks to do these things. So we just you just run with it and go that. Okay, that's good. And you want to come up with a mechanic that feels good, and you want to have the time to tune and polish it. And games now take years of development because of all the things that are important, and the depth and detail and the amount of hours of gameplay. And back 20 years ago, you just figured it out and you went and you ran with it. And go good, let's go, right? And let's just make more of that.
So one of the most memorable spells from the Chamber of Secrets was the jumping spell, Spongify. As it turns out, the spell actually came about as a bit of a lucky accident.
That Spongify spell was turns a hard surface bouncy or soft or spongy or something like that was the description, right? And we're okay, we had no idea what to do with this. But then one of our engineers on the team was working late one night, and he's like, I just set that up to make a bounce, but then I just turned the dials. I turned it to 11, and he'd jump on it, and he would just go boom, and just through the air, and just and we got the animation, so his arms would kind of wave and try and balance, and then we put a little steering. We saw that. I was like, oh my god, that's awesome. That was so that's cool, right? Loved it, right? And so we added a little bit of steering mechanic in there so you can kind of guide yourself and do that. And then that spell was supposed to be towards the end of the game, right? This was supposed to be one of the last spells you get. We had so much fun with that, and there were so many fun mechanics that we could do with flying through the air like that we pushed it forward into the beginning of the game and really tried to extend it throughout, because it was so fun to do, and it allowed us creatively to really put Harry or Ron and Hermione, honestly, I think the third one, you could beat any one of them through the game experience in a much richer way than we had anticipated. So that little hey, what if I set this sponge jump thing from 5 to 100, and you see that trajectory happen, and just it was just magic, right? Those are things that we couldn't have planned for that, right? Just that's awesome, let's do it, and you have fun and just run with those ideas.
The team at No Wonder also added an Easter egg to the Gnome minigame.
One of the things we did is we set it about 1 in every 10 times the deck goes in, it'll do a bowling ball strike sound effect in there. So we had done it originally just as a goof, right? The audio designer's like, oh my god, I just had to try it, right? Of putting this bowling ball sound in there, and I recall seeing it and laughing so hard and loving it so much that I brought in our executive producer for it and said, hey, can we keep this in? We'll do it we'll set it it's only 1 in 10 times if you actually hear it, right? And he's like, yeah, it's fine, right? Let's do it, right? So we kept that in there.
The first 2 movies were released within a year of each other. However, going forward, WB decided to increase the gap between films to about 18 months. I asked Christo what he and the team did with the extra time between the second and third game.
honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of lull in there. I think we maybe had 3 months before the next contract was signed on that third one, but we dove right into it as well, right? And that in that time we were exploring the Unreal 2 engine had been out or had come out while we were making the second game. We were looking at the technology there and what was the cost or impacts of switching engines, what was the scope like, and the second engine afforded us a whole new level of technology that we hadn't had in the first. So we had to do a lot of investigation of what the costs were, what were the art production costs, what was the performance cost. The first game was in a mode that if you had a really bad PC, you could run the game in what's called a software render mode, right? And it looks terrible. I mean, it's just like, I mean, by God, by today's standards, even then, it was just like, oh, it's so bad. But it would afford those people who couldn't afford a graphics card, even then, right, the ability to at least play that game. And we wanted, the broadest audience. Like, more kids are going to have these PCs at home because their parents have it and so on. And I'm sure a lot of people are just like, taking dad's PC to play this game. And dad going crazy, I need to get on and do some work or whatever.
I was also curious about the process of developing tie-in games for movies which were themselves still in development.
Well, like I said, when the first game, we got all those blurry pictures, right? By the second game, we had earned the trust of everyone and knew that we were just as passionate as fans as they were. We're not going to let this out. It was not to our advantage either. So we had more set images, we had more set design, we had a lot more imagery, screenshots, photos, and things to work from. So it really allowed us to build a game that was more in tune with the film and the movie sets, where it made sense. Again, we still had the freedom to go off into the corners in the different directions of it to make a game. The one thing I do recall is in the second game, was it the Ford Anglia? Is that the name of the car? Ron and his brothers drive to pick up Harry. The way the movie opened up to that opening shot and the way we did it in the game, it was almost exactly identical. Like, it was, you couldn't get any closer. And the reality was, at the time when we set up that cinematic shot, we just, like, I remember myself walking with our cinematic director, like, this is the opening shot we should do for our game in terms of where the Ford Anglia comes in and that opening scene. And we just guessed, like, we just said, hey, that sounds good. We like that angle and that approach. And the movie did the exact same thing. So he and I were like kind of chuckling to ourselves, like, oh my God, we guessed the shot in the movie. We had no idea how it was going to be shot.
And speaking of Ford Anglia, did the team have any plans to incorporate a flying level into their version, similar to the one for PlayStation 1? And also, were there any cut levels across the three games?
I have no doubt we considered it, but I think it got to just a scope and time that there were levels cut, right, from the game, right? I'm going to say it's either the first or the second game. There's probably 2 levels that we just couldn't finish, right? They got maybe halfway through, if that, and we had to go and look, we just don't have time to make it, so we cut them. But all games do that, right? I mean, the reality is, you think about what you see for the final product, there's so much stuff that ends on the cutting room floor. Just like a film, just like a movie, there's pieces there's just not enough time, or and frankly, those, if you want to say these missing levels, they were terrible, right? I mean, we cut them because they weren't good. What was left behind was left behind for a reason. We could not make it work, or the person working on it just couldn't find the right groove that the other levels, they didn't meet the quality that we would expect.
So, what does Christo think about these games, looking back at them almost 2 decades later?
I look back, I've made so many games and been doing this for, so many years, and I still love the business I'm in and what I do. But I look back on those years of making the Harry Potter games very fondly, and the people that I worked with there, I'm still in touch with many of them. We made such good friendships in that time. We had such a great time doing it. It's just, it's cool to every once in a while you hear someone say, hey, I'd love to know more about what that was. It was such a team effort, right? Everybody worked so hard on this. I was just one in many people that were building this game and trying to bring it to life. And granted, there's some long hours, right? We definitely we put a lot of time in that. It was hard, and it was hard work to bring that. When you have that much passion and you have that much excitement about it, it's not just I'm going to go to work today. It's there are days oh man, I am just wiped out, right? But we were driven to bring that to life, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And a lot of satisfaction. We're really proud. I think you talk to anyone, we're very proud of those games and what we were able to deliver in the time and period of the technology. for what they are. They're quite a treasure to us.
Of course, I couldn't end the interview without asking the question that's on everyone's mind. Would he be up for doing a remaster?
I would be what an absolute treat that would be, to remaster those so that they can be played again. Yeah, gosh, if there was a way to remaster those, I don't know where the source data files are at anymore. What a delight that would be to rebuild those. It'd be fun.
A huge thanks to Christo Vuchetich for agreeing to do both of these interviews, and a big thanks to the entire team at No Wonder for their passion and dedication to making these games. Please leave a comment and let Christo and the team know about your memories and experience with these games. I hope you enjoyed this interview. As always, thanks for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.